Very interesting. I think when I was a kid. Good morning. Learning as a source for Shleima Filan Chai Basarach. We're at the bottom of Tzadi Dalet Amud Aleph, where the Gemara has been talking about the inyan of whether leather is considered something that could be washed. Our Mishnah had said, was talking about from a pasuk. The pasuk says that there's a din that you have to wash a clothing that gets blood from the chatas on it. And our Mishnah included the oir, leather, as one of the things that if blood gets on it, if dam of a chatas gets on it, that you have to wash it out. So we asked that from a Mishnah in Shabbos, that if you got a little bit of, if you got had a pillow that got dirty, if the pillow is made out of cloth, then all you can do is wipe it off with a napkin. But you can't wash it because washing is a malacha of libun. You're not allowed to wash on Shabbos. But if it was made out of leather, then you could put on it. Then you could put on it water. So you see that water on leather is not considered washing. If it was considered washing, it should be asur to do on Shabbos. So we wanted to say this is really machlokes tanoim. Our Mishnah that says that there is washing on Shabbos. We said over there that a beged, that they argued about how you can clean off. What do you do? What do you do if you get dam chatas on a kli, on an ar? The Rabbanan say that it's considered washing. They say, and therefore you have to be megaret, you have to scrape it off. And the Acherim say you wash it. So the Acherim is like our Mishnah, and it seems that the Chachamim are like the Mishnah in Shabbos. Then we brought from Rav Chia bar Ashi, he says, I used to be by Rav, and I used to pour water over his shoes on Shabbos when they got wet. So that seems to be like the Rabbanan, that they're not concerned about washing. Our shoes are made out of leather, so we're not worried about washing. We don't consider it to be kibbutz. So that would be like the Chachamim, not like Acherim. Then we asked, okay, so we have a lot. We have so far three factors. We have the two Mishnayos. We have our Mishnah. We have the machlokes Acherim, and we have the Mishnah in Shabbos. Then we have the Acherim, machlokes Acherim, and the Rabbanan. And then we have the statement of Rav Chia bar Ashi, and now we ask from a pasuk. The pasuk says the Gabi Mitzayra. It's mentioned specifically being mechavis or. If or has a tzaras on it, you wash it. So Rava had wanted to be mechalik between hard leather and soft leather. The pasuk that said that you wash leather, that's soft leather. Everyone agrees that soft leather needs, you can be mechavis, and there is kibbutz on soft leather. The question is, it got to be hard leather. That's what the Acherim and the Rabbanan were arguing about. So now we're going to start from the bottom page. Amarab, ikashali hakasu. Rava said, this is my problem. Kar muksasas deraganin. The first thing that we had mentioned the Mishnah in Shabbos that says that if you have pillows, if they're made out of cloth, then you have to scrape them off. If they're made out of ar, then you can pour water on them. But kar muksasas are soft. So it's soft leather. And we said soft leather, everyone agrees there's kivas on it. Elam Rava, kol kivas, the less lay kiskus loishme kibas. He says there's more to it than just whether it's hard or soft. Even if it's soft, you can pour water over leather because it's not considered washing. Washing is only if you scrub, right? You have to take the cloth and scrub it. Just pouring water is not laundry, right? You have a laundry machine that has to agitate. Without the agitation, without the scrubbing together, that's not cold washing. So the pillow, they wouldn't scrub it. They would just pour water on it. That's why it wasn't called kibbutz. He said, no, many times I was by Rav, and I poured water over his shoes on Shabbos. It's mashma only because he poured water, but he wouldn't be allowed to agitate it. So the Chayru, the Gemara saying, why would it have to be Aval Kivas Loi? The Chayru is hard leather. So the Ibarak and the you could answer it's talking about soft leather, and according to everyone, and therefore the only way to wash it is by pouring water, but you can't agitate it. Or you could say it's talking about hard leather, and it's like the Acherim that we said. The Acherim say that even hard leather is usher to wash. So Gemara, he hachi beged nami. I'm going to ask the obvious question, but what are you saying? You're saying over there that he had to pour the water over the pillow in order to avoid whether you could just explain it either with hard wet leather, soft leather, but it's talking about something that you weren't allowed to do mechabes. But we said that it's only because it was hard leather that you could pour water on it, but the one made out of beged, you had to scrape it. Why do you have to scrape it? We're only talking about pouring water. We're not talking about it. Agitating the water. It should be mutter even by beged. So that beged sharisu zehu kibusa. Says no. This whole din that we said that you have to agitate in order for it to be considered kibus is only by leather, but on a beged, as long as just soaking it cleans it off, because it absorbs the water and that cleans it off. So by leather, in order for it to be kibus, you have to move it around. Good morning. By beged, as long as you pour water on it, that's considered kibus. If you throw a handkerchief into water, you chayev for cleaning it on Shabbos. Zera pishna l'mayim chayev. But if you throw flaxseed or flax fibers into water, you chayev. So Bishlam is Sudar Avid Kibus. So I understand what you said. Now the Gemara is asking on that. Once we brought up this memra of Rava, that he said the Sudar is going to be mechuvis just by throwing it into water. It doesn't need agitation. I understand that part. Elazar Pishtan, my timer. Why are you usher for throwing flax into water? That's not cleaning it. It's not dirty. If you'll say the problem is throwing it in water causes it to sprout, there's a problem of causing it to grow. If that's the case, then wheat and barley as well. Why is it bedafka pishtan? But we know there's no issue with putting barley and wheat into water. You're allowed to cook them on Yom Tif. There's no. We don't say that you can't put them in water. So now the problem with pishtan is it has a thick liquid that comes out of it. So when you soak it in water, it becomes one mass of pishtan. Becomes a whole thing. It's like Gemara, yachi shlachanami. If that's the case, why by iris also you should be asked to soak them in water, because the iris, the hides, also emit a liquid, and then everything becomes a big clump together. If you're saying that the flax is also because it clumps together, let's say the hides also are also when you pour water on it because they clump together. So no, it's different. When you do flax, it's similar to lisha, to kneading, that ataka becomes one mixture. But the hides, although something comes out of it and they clump together somewhat, it's not considered lisha. You can just separate them. You still have a bunch of separate hides. They're just stuck together. You can separate them, so it's not a din lisha. Darish Rabba, mutter l'chavas menal b'Shabbos. Rabba said it's mutter to wash a shoe on Shabbos. When you pour water What about what we just said? How could you say it's mutter to wash, to be mechavis, which means to do with agitation, to clean a shoe on Shabbos? But Rav Chia bar Ashi said many times I would wash Rav's shoes on Shabbos, but I would only do it by pouring water on them. I wouldn't agitate it. Hadi uki Rava Amayra Lea. Rava appointed someone to call out. I made a mistake. I misspoke when I said that you could be mechaves shoes. Ein chanami, that's also. I want everyone to know I said the wrong thing. It's only allowed. You're only allowed to pour water on shoes. You can't clean them. So the Mishnah continued. Hakibus b'makom kadosh. We said that this mitzvah that we talked about, that we learned from the pasuk says that when dam chatas gets on the clothing of the kahanim, you have to wash it out. So the Mishnah had said that this has to be done b'makom kadosh. You can't take it out. You can't take it to a cleaner's. You have to do it in the Beis Hamikdash. Minani mili. Where does this come from? The Tanra on the chabis b'makom kadosh. Torah says you should wash it b'makom kadosh. I don't even know why we'd ask minani mili. Torah says it straight out. Shvirus kli cheres minayin. We said this is all by a beggar that you can wash it out. But we said if it was a kli cheres that got dam chatas on it, you have to break it. Where does that come from? Talmud Laimel kli cheres asher tevushal boy yishava. So it says asher tevushal boy yishava. Boy is telling you that it has to be the makom kadosh. This is the next pasuk. It's also referring back to what it says ukli cheres, that it also has the din. It has to be cleaned in the Beis Hamikdash by breaking it. Mariko shtifa b'kli nechayshus minayim. How do we know the din of a kli nechayshus, a metal kli? That we said it's not like a laundry. It's not like clothing that you just clean it, and it's not like a kli cheres that you have to break, but you clean a kli mat. That's the way we're familiar with. If you used it over fire, you have to burn it out with a blowtorch. If it was used with water or with a liquid, then you have to clean it out by cooking in it. So how do you know that also has to be done in the Beis Hamikdash? The pasuk also adds this to the same. This is also the same following pasuk and says ve'im. It's going back on the b'makom kadosh. So the Mishnah ended off. This is a chaymer of the chatas that has this din kibus that if the dam chatas landed on a beged, it has a din kibus, which we're going to see in the next Gemara. That only applies to chatas. The other dinim of a kli cheres that needs shvira, and the kli matras that needs shita for marika. That's mariko shtifa. Those that will apply to other kachim. But the din of kibus is only on chatas. And this is a chaymer of chatas. There's no other chumras of chatas. Va'ika shenichnas dama lifnim. They have a din that a chatas, you could have a chatois pnimius. You have chatois that are brought inside into the heichel, which other karbanos are not. So the chatois hachitzonis. We're talking about the chumrah of the chatas hachitzonis, not the chatas pnimius. The chatas hachitzonis don't go lifnim. Shem nichnas dama lifnim psula. Well, what about another chumrah of a chatas that the Torah says that if you bring the dam of a chatas chitzayim lifnim, it's possible. So he says any dam that's brought inside the heichel to be thrown in the heichel will passel. It's not just the chatas; it's other things. So it's not a chumrah of a chatas. What affecting Moshe Chaim Chaper al Chayvik Krisis? The chatas mechayev al Chayvik Krisis. Another karbanos are not. B'chatois the shmiyas koil. We're talking about the chatas of shmiyas koil. This is the carb from the oil of Yored. That this chatas is not for a chorus, so that's why it's not more chomer. So what about the fact we could say chomer of chatas that it needs 4 matanis? You put the dam on the mizbeach 4 times. Rabbi Shmuel says all the dam. He doesn't hold of you do shtayim sheim arba for the other karbanos. He says they all need 4 nesinas, 2 on each corner, 1 on each side of the corner. In fact, what about the fact that the the chatas needs to be done on the four horns of the mizbech, which no other carbon needs. The other ones are done in different places. Karen, it has to be on the Dalit Kronos. Karen, what about the fact that it has to be on the horn, or Ika Etzpa, the fact that it's done with his finger as opposed to being thrown from the Klisharis, the chatas is done specifically on the corner of the Mizbeach. We said two or three, we had a bunch of chumras that we could have said. Our Mishnah just picked one of them. It doesn't mean to the exclusion of any others. Zok the Mishnah. Beged sheyotza chutz leklayim. If you have a beged that dam chatas got on it, so we said the din is you have to clean it off in the azara. What happened if it left the Beis Hamikdash? Nichnas u'mechavsei b'makom kadosh. You have to bring it back because the Torah said you have to do it b'makom kadosh. You have to wash it b'makom kadosh. Nitma chutz leklayim. What happens if you took it out, which you weren't supposed to do, and then it got tamei while it's outside of the Beis Hamikdash? So what are you going to do? If you can't bring it in because you can't bring something tamei into the Beis Hamikdash, but you have to wash it out. There's a mitzvah to clean it, and that has to be done in the Beis Hamikdash. So you rip it. Then you bring it in and you wash it b'makom kadosh. So it's very interesting. So the din of tumah, right? We know that there's a din. Let's say you have a beged. We're going to see the same thing with the kli charis. If they become tamei, in order for something to become tamei, it has to have a din kli, right? If you have a piece of wood and it becomes like our mats that we use for schach, we know there's always a big inyan, a big question. If they're made for people to use, like to lie down on, then they're not good, because then they have a kli, and you can't have schach that's makabel tumah. But in order for it to be designated but if they never have in mind to use it as a kli, then it's not makabel tumah. So we're saying they could also be reversed. Even if something is already tamei, if you make it that it's no longer a kli, it loses its tumah. You could reverse the process. So if you have, let's say, a beged and you rip it, so it's no longer a valid beged, it loses its tumah. Tumah is a spiritual thing; it's not a physical thing. So it could be taken out by taking the object out of its status of a kli. So you rip the kli, so now it's no longer tumah. It still has the dam chatas on it, and there's still a mitzvah to wash that out. So you bring it into the Beis Hamikdash, and after you got rid of the tumah, you could wash it off. And the same thing with the kli charis. Kli charis yatsa chutz leklayim nichnas v'shayver b'makom kadosh. If you take it out, you have to bring it in and break it in the Beis Hamikdash. That's the way you get rid of the dam chatas on it. Nitma chutz leklayim, and if it became tamei chutz leklayim, noikva, you put a hole in it, so it's no longer valid kli, and now it's not tamei. But nichnas v'shayver b'makom kadosh. You do the mitzvah of breaking the kli that has dam chatas in the makom kadosh, in the Beis Hamikdash. Klina choishes, a metal kli sheyatza chutz leklayim, nichnas umarkoi b'shaytvei b'makom kadosh. You have to take it in, and you have to do hagala on it to get out the dam chatas. Nitma chutz leklayim. It became tamei outside of the Beis Hamikdash, so you can't clean it out outside the Beis Hamikdash. You have to do it in the Beis Hamikdash. So peichsa, you crack it, you make a big hole in it. The nichnas, you have to make a bigger hole in a kli, a metal kli, because it could be fixed. So in order to get rid of the shame kli, you make a bigger hole. But nichnas, umarka v'shaytfei b'makom kadosh. Then you can clean it out in the proper way to get rid of the dam chatas. Maskef l'Ravina. Kairoi, what are we saying? We're saying the eitzah for this beged that got tamei, it had dam chatas in it, and you took it out, and it got tamei. So now you want to bring it in. So we say you rip it. But doesn't the ripping make it impossible also to do the kvisa, to wash it in the Beis Hamikdash? Kaira beged amar Rachmana. The Torah says that you have to wash a beged. The lav beged who once you ripped it, it lost its shame beged. That's how it lost the tumah. So why doesn't it also lose the din that you wash it out? So Gemara, the Meshayabei Kedei Ma'afiris. He's talking about where he left the amount of a handkerchief. So ripping it is enough to take off the tumah, even though it still has a handkerchief's worth of unripped cloth, so it still has the din beged. We said, but if you left that amount, that there's still a handkerchief's worth, it's not going to be considered that you ripped it sufficiently to get rid of the tumah, so you haven't accomplished anything. So that which it doesn't become, that which it still has a din tumah, as long as it's a handkerchief's worth of beged that wasn't ripped, that's only midiraban. Midiraisa, as long as you ripped it most of its length, it loses its tumah, but it still has a shame beged that if you bring it into the base, that you can bring it into the Beis Hamikdash and be yaitza the din that you have to be mechabeset for the dam chatas. Kli cheres sheyat. So we said that a kli cheres that went out, and it became tamei, you have to put a hole in it and then bring it in to get rid of the tumah. That takes it out, that it's no longer a kli legabi the din tumah, and you bring it in and then you break it in the Beis Hamikdash for the din of the dam chatas on it. Have the same question. Once you make a hole, it's no longer a kli. So he made a very small hole that it's only taking away the din tumah. As long as it's no longer usable, it loses its tumah, but still has a shame kli. Kli nechayshes peichsai. We said you make a bigger hole in the kli nechayshes. But lav kli. Again, the kli nechayshes is a bigger hole, so that's also, it's not a kli. So making this larger hole would make it not a kli, even for the din of let's say burning it out or boiling it to get rid of the dam chatas on it. But we're talking about where he then fixed the kli. He added, he banged out. There was a hole, so he just bangs it out until it covers the hole. So now it's restored to have a din of a kli, and then he can bring it into the base. He brings it to the Beis Hamikdash, and he's able to then burn it out to get rid of the dam chatas, like the Torah says. Amar Rish Lakish. Rish Lakish asked the following question: Me'il shenitma. What happened if the me'il of the Kohen Gadol became tamei? Machnisa bepachas mishol shal sholish u'mechavse. So this me'il of the Kohen Gadol, it got some dam chatas on it, and he took it out, and it became tamei. So you have a problem. We said the din is you rip the me'il. You rip, the beged. But the me'il, it's also to rip the begadim of the Kohen Gadol. So what are you going to do about it? So he says there's different eitzah. You bring less, you don't rip it, but you bring in less than 3 by 3. 3 by 3 is not an amount that's makabel tumah. So therefore you're allowed to bring, even though this beged is tameh, you could bring less than the 3 by 3 section of it, just by folding it over and sticking it over between, right over the border between the outside and in the azara, and then and you clean it inside. Because the Torah said you're not allowed to rip the me'il. We have said that very thick cloth or very thin cloth doesn't have a din of 3 etzbos, 3 fingers by 3 fingers. They have to be bigger. A very soft cloth, a very thick cloth, are less usable. You need to have 3 tvachim by 3 tvachim in order to be usable. So why do we say he can only allow in 3 etzbos by 3 etzbos? It should be 3 tvachim by 3 tvachim. So agavavi and chashibi. No, since it's attached to a whole other cloth, it's only when you're talking about an individual cloth that's 3 fingers by 3 fingers that a thick or thin one is not going to be considered its own beged. But if it's part of a larger cloth, even more than 3 by 3 is considered chashuv. Correct the Gemara. How can we say that you clean, you do kvisa, you wash out the mechatas to get rid of the mechatas? You do that in the Beis Hamikdash. But you need the shiva samanim. Dam Rav Nachman Amar Rav Bua, dam chatas umaris legoyim shvichas shiva samanim. They need the shiva samanim, which we all know from Enkel Ikenu that we say every week. Rashi says, Baboy, Zakt Rashi, Baboy, Damchat, Shivas Amonim, Hashrim, Zakt Nida, Le'inin Samim, Roy Tafel, Merglayim, Veneter, Uburis, Va'oil, V'kamuna, Va'ashlag, Zakt Gemara, and V'heichim Alinan, Merglayim Lazara. How could our Mishnah say that you have to do kibbutz in the Azara, but one of the Shivas Amamonim is Merglayim, and you're not allowed to bring Merglayim into the Azara? Tanya, we know this very well, right? That Peter Maktaris, you're not allowed to bring it into the Beis Hamikdash. So how are you washing with the Shivas Amanim, which is the only way to wash it thoroughly? If you'll say no, it's not a problem because you mix it together with the other 6 Samamonim, so once it's part of a mixture, it's okay. But the only way the Shiva Samamonim work is if you do them one after the other. It's going to see you have to do each one 3 times. It's a bunch of different processes. You don't mix them together. We say in the Mishnah, if you did it even in the wrong order, or certainly if you did them all at the same time, then it's not going to work. So you have to do it separately. So you have the chayra meiraglayim on its own, which is also. If you'll say that he just mixed it with one of the samanim, not with all of them, but we know you have to do each one 3 times as each one. Tanan. The Gemara says no. Even though we said you have to do each one on its own, that doesn't mean really on its own. And like we said over there, the Amar Shlokish, Roik Tafel Tzarach Shehayim Kol Echad V'Echad. They all, Roik Tafel was one of the ingredients. It means saliva from someone who hadn't eaten that day, like a very clean saliva. That was mixed in all the other 6 samamonim as well, including the meraglayim. So since the meraglayim was mixed in something else, it wasn't usher as a mixture to be brought into the Beis Hamikdash. Zak the Mishnah. This dama chatas, whether it was cooked in a kli, or whether it was poured while it's hot into the kli, it wasn't over a fire, but you poured hot mei chatas, dam chatas into a kli, or you cooked kachim. It doesn't even mean the dam chatas; it could be the basa chatas. Echad kachim kachim, echad kachim kalim. Yeah, it's talking about dam chatas. Whether it's kachim kachim or kachim kalim, tuna mariko shtifa. All of them have this din that you have to do mariko shtifa. That you have to, if it's a metal kli, you have to either burn it out or boil it out. Rav Shimon kachim kalim tuna mariko shtifa. Rav Shimon disagrees. He says even though mariko shtifa is not just by chatas, but it's only on kachim kachim, it doesn't apply to kachim kalim. Zakamar Tanaraban Asher Tevushal boy. The Torah says that you cook in it. Where do we know? Even like the Mishnah said, if you poured hot. What are we talking about? Give me a second. Yeah, I'm not clear. I don't remember if it's talking about the dam or the basra at this point. But in any case, I think it's talking about the dam, because that's what we're talking about, the dam of the carbon. The Torah says yishava, so it means anything that's in it that it gets cooked in. It doesn't have to be dafka cooked. It could even be that it was something hot that touched the kli. What happened if you suspended? We're talking about a chatas. We're not just talking about the dam. What happens if you suspended the chatas in a tanner so it doesn't touch the walls of the tanner? Mao. When the Torah says that you have to clean it out, is that only if it's both cooked as well as if it's absorbed? Or maybe when you suspend it, it was cooked in the oven, even though it didn't absorb from the suspended carbon into the walls of the tanner, but it was cooked. So therefore, the tanner, if it's, let's say, made out of charetz, you're going to have to break it. If it's made out of metal, you have to burn it out. Amarava tashma echet bishal bay echet sheir l'soicher reseach belua. We said in our Mishnah, whether it's cooked in it or even if it poured on top of it something that's hot. When it pours on something that's hot, all you have is belua. You don't have bishul. So that seems to indicate it doesn't have to be both. It doesn't have to be both bishul and belua. As long as it's one of them, that's enough. So tomorrow, belua below bishul can be bailan. That's what kind of question is that? Obviously, if it gets absorbed, even without bishul, that's going to require being cleaned out. Kikami bailam bishul below belua. The question is the other way around. When you cooked it in the tanner without it absorbing, the question is that going to require cleaning out? Tashma, he said that the oven in the Beis Hamikdash was made out of metal. Now the understanding is that the reason why it's made out of metal is because you're going to cook kachim in it. If you cook in a kli cheres, in the tanner of cheres, every day you're going to have absorption from the carbonis that were cooked in it, and you're going to have to break it at the end of the day. Otherwise, you're going to have nicer. You're going to have leftover stuff from the carbon in it. We're not talking about what drips on the oven. We're talking about just from the din that you cooked in it. If we would say think that just cooking without absorbing is not a problem, the evet shel charis, what's the problem with making it of earthenware? Why does it have to be matris? Given it, it means even it's not touching the charis when you suspend your cow in the middle of the tanner. It doesn't touch the whatever drips into the coals in the bottom. That's not a problem. And it's not touching the sides. So if you hold that you need that it's belua, there's no belua, so you wouldn't have to break it even if it was charis. So why is it necessary to make it out of metal? So keeping it kashire menachas after years and bataner, since they would make menachas which were baked on the sides of the tanner, and therefore they would have a belua. It wasn't just animals that were cooked. They also did bread, and bread, the way they did bread, they didn't have racks. They would put it on the side of the wall. It has both bishul and bilua avdin and shel matras. Made of matras, so they could clean it out every night, and it wouldn't have become aser because of the nicer in it. Hahu tanura, the atchu be taicha. There was a tanner that they made in it. They smeared it with animal fats, which was kosher animal fats, but they made it a fleishig oven. Whenever he said that you can never eat bread from this oven, even to eat such bread with salt, because we're worried that maybe he's going to put kuska as a dairy product. We all know there's an issue. You're not allowed to make fleishig bread or milchik bread because we're worried that you'll put butter on your fleishig bread or you'll put fat. You'll put a deli on your milchik bread. So therefore, we don't allow, since this has animal fats on the oven, it's going to make the oven fleishigs. Meisvei ein lashon isha b'cholav. You're not allowed to knead bread with milk. Im lash kolapas kula asura nehergel aver. And if you kneaded it, all the pas are going to be also because we're worried about that you're going to eat the milk bread with fleishigs. Similarly, ain't tashing the tanner ba'alya. You can't smear the tanner with the fats of the tail fat of a sheep, which is kosher. This Mishnah says you can't. The tanner is asur, whatever tanner you make it is asur, until you make another fire in the tanner, and that will clean it out. But before we said you have to. Any bread you cook in it in the future is going to be asur. So Rabbi Bar Eloi tiyufta. It's takashver on Rabbi Eloi that says you can never clean that tanner. Why? You could make a fire in it and burn it out. If it's true that the Rabbi Bar Eloi is right, and you can clean out a tanner by burning it out, by lighting the fire in it and burning it out. Amay Amar Rav, Kaderis Pesach Yishavru. If you have a kli cheres that you have chametz in it on Pesach, you have to throw it out. You have to break it because you're not going to be able to use it after Pesach. If it has chametz in it, it's going to have chametz shavel of a Pesach. I don't know why I don't know. I'm sure there's an explanation of why you can't just sell the chametz, which is what we do. But if he didn't sell the chametz, he has to break it after Pesach. Only, why not? Why can't he just put it into the oven and burn it out? Why can't he just put it in the fire and burn out the chametz? You say that which we said that you can burn it out is talking about a tanner of a metal tanner, so that you could burn out, but a cheres in a chanami you can't. Or we could even talk about earthenware tanner, which it's not as easy to burn out. But nevertheless, you can burn out a tanner by you can, when you place a fire in the tanner, it burns out whatever is inside of it. But the pot that has chametz in it, when you try to put it in a fire, the fire is on the outside and it absorbed the chametz from the inside. That's why you put the chametz on inside. So therefore, it doesn't clean it out. Why don't we let him make a fire, build a fire inside of the kli cheres? Chayes alayim, the mitzvah. Well, we don't allow that because he's going to be scared. If he puts a fire on the inside, it's going to break. He's not going to trust it. And if he's not going to make a sufficient fire. Therefore, they used to bake a certain type of round kli cheres. They used to bake bread on the inside of it. Since it has to, when you burn it out, you burn it from the outside, it's going to remain asr. Okay, we'll stop over here. Shkayach.